Thanks to Sana Skin Studio for supporting the No podcast. Sana is a skin studio that is shifting the relationship with your skin and your products through goal-driven facials, real guidance, and clean skincare. Stay tuned for our promo code so you can receive $25 off of your first facial at Sana Skin Studio. Welcome to the No podcast with me, Nikki Spo. Welcome back, everyone. You are listening to The No, and I am your hostess, Nikki Spo. I'm excited for you all to hear today's conversation with Nancy Jarecki. Nancy Jarecki is the innovator behind the multiple award-winning company, Betty Beauty, Inc. And today we are going to talk about how to scale and sell your startup, overcoming personal challenges, tips for breaking boundaries in the beauty space, who sets the standards of beauty for women and how this affects us, and self-confidence. Join me for this fun and insightful combo with Nancy Jarecki. Let's get started. Nancy, hello. Welcome to The No, where we pride ourselves on not necessarily knowing everything, but coming to know ourselves. So welcome. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I'm so excited to chat with you about your very impressive life that you've lived. And to give our friends and listeners a little background, you were instrumental in the development and launch of two major cable networks, Movietime and E! Entertainment Television, also Moviefone's sale to AOL, and you are the innovator behind Betty Beauty, Inc.
It really has been a wonderful learning experience for me.
Well, I want to hear all about it. And before we get into the meat and potatoes of our chat, where we'll be giving our listeners big tips on how to scale and sell a startup, which I myself will be taking notes on, and breaking boundaries in the beauty space, give us some of your backstory. You grew up in Kansas, went to art school in Texas, and moved to LA to pursue a career as an artist. And then what?
Well, it's interesting. I'm one of those stories where I went to college. I quit school because there was an opportunity in LA and it happened to work out. And so I did. I grew up in a very small town in Kansas, was always kind of that resourceful person where there's stuff out there. I just know I don't have my hands on it because I'm in a small town. My parents kind of knew that I was going to outgrow the town and probably outgrow the state a little bit. So they suggested—
I love that your parents knew that about you.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely.
That's so great.
And, and I had a really good head on my shoulder. I wasn't kind of this naive getting off the pumpkin patch or the turnip, truck. Coming from a small town, my parents didn't want me to go to New York. Let's just have some boundaries here. So they said,
could die in New York City, right? Like,
they got guns,
They have guns.
Right. And so the South was a good place to go. What I did was I found a great art school that had an opportunity to get to Cooper Union for a internship in New York City.
Okay. So you were like, oh, but there's this way around. I can work around this.
And so I ended up getting into this school, and within, a few months, I thought I was going to be a designer, clothing designer.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, me too, Nancy. Yeah, me too. Yeah. I went to the Art Institute for Fashion Design.
Yes, exactly, yes. Little did I know that you needed to know fractions really well. I just wanted to create, and it just turned out that there was a studio class that I was taking, and a professor was like, wow, I really like how you're painting. It's abstract. And he was throwing out some of these names of artists, and I kind of knew some of them. Rauschenberg I knew. And he goes, have you ever thought about pursuing, art? And I'm like, well, get me to New York.
Get me to New York.
And he goes, there is an exchange program with Cooper Union. And so I literally was barely 18, and he said he would sponsor me if I submitted to going to Cooper Union.
Your parents are like, God, no.
No, they didn't really. Yeah, what's great is they didn't really know, but it was like a great thing to get. Yeah. So at 18, I am in New York City, and this would be, I'm going to date myself, but this was, early 80s, right? And of course, I have read and, everything that there is to read. Also, back in the day, I could get on one of the channels Elsa, which was like this old fashion show in New York. I forgot what her name is. She just died. And I would watch that. And you would find out about, the designers in the fashion district, but you also learned about like clubs. So in my reading, I knew about the Palladium. I knew about Area. I knew about these clubs, and so I would get my friends that also came with me from Texas, uh, uh, and we would go to these clubs. And so I wasn't a partier. I was just so curious, and I think curiosity is probably one of the best things about starting a company. I think it's one of the best components of understanding a product. What is the product? Are people using it? If I have a curiosity about it, other people must. But it's kind of like this wonderful trait to have. And not everybody is like that today. They're kind of like, I just want to start a business and sell it.
Money, right?
Yeah, and you got to be in it inside. I make it, to this private VIP area, the Michael Todd room, and there is David Bowie, there is Boy George, and I'm like, oh my God, this is great. And so I'm very happy, and I was not
You're very happy. You're like, I'm very happy in this moment.
I'm very happy in this moment, and I really learned a lot, and having those opportunities that you don't even know that they're opportunities,
Yeah.
you grab them.
Oh my gosh, yes, I'm getting chills.
Grab them. And at those nights, I met these two guys from LA. We become friends. And those people were in LA, and they too were starting out in the entertainment business. So I'm in New York. I do this little internship. I then go down and I go, for about a year, almost 2 years, to this fashion school, an art school. And then a friend of mine he was in medical school, and he got a grant to go to UCLA, and they were flying him out there. And he goes, "Hey, I have a ticket." And I go, "I've got two friends." And so I'm going. And I end up going. And I had met this couple who had a fashion a fashion company. And when I was talking to them, I thought, what's needed for my age group? Companies like Trim and Quicksilver were kind of what I focused at. And they kind of focused in the JCPenney older people. And I thought, well, that's not a need that I know. Have you guys ever thought about doing a younger line? And they're like, well, and people could just kind of settle with what they're used to. And the wife had said, well, we kind of thought about that. We kind of have an idea for a designer. And I said, well, how about I do some artwork for what would be kind of like this, trendy youth line. And they're like, are you saying that you want a job? I'm like, yeah. I quit school. I moved to LA. I worked for this company. And I still had the two friends that I had met in New York. We're all friends. They then introduced me around, and I immediately meet a couple people, and they have this idea for a show, which back then cable had not really started yet. And they had this idea for a content show that was all about movies and behind the scenes, based on the early press kits that you could get from the studios. So what they needed was a young person. MTV had been out for a couple years. They kind of wanted to use the MTV model, but with video jockeys about this entertainment content. And I kind of had done my thing with this company, and it was, they call them startups now. We did not call it a startup back then. So there was probably maybe 8 of us that decided to launch this idea. We called it Movietime, and it was really the brainchild of these two guys, Alan and Larry. And all of us were kind of like these young, scrappy kids that we took, a building that was like in West Hollywood, or in East Hollywood, that was kind of sketchy. And we really did it on a shoestring. And from there is what we came up with Movietime, where we had four VJs. One happened to be, Greg Kinnear, Julie Moran. Our celebrity was Richard Blade, who was the Ryan Seacrest in the 80s. And we just knew that we had kind of what I call a widget, and that is content that people would be interested in. And we just kind of plugged along. I was in charge of the creative aspect of it. They basically were like, can you make this look cool? Can you do graphics? Can you do the staging, the studio? And so you just kind of think, okay, what do you think is cool? Well, at the time, Pee-wee's Playhouse, was really popular. I couldn't do MTV because that was already done. So if there's things that are already done, if you can launch off of something like that you like but not copy, and I thought, shoot, you know what? I'm going to find out who does Pee-wee's Playhouse, and it's this guy Jeremy Relton. And here I am. I'm now 20, almost 21, and I have a meeting with him. We have no money, but we have, and a lot of it is the enthusiasm and very confident. And that's where I'm going to let a little secret out where I still say it today. You fake it till you make it. And it was one of those, like, I have never had a conversation with an established scene designer. And here I am talking to this guy, and he basically was like, sounds like you guys might be onto something. And I'm not a finger pointer. One of the things that I'm finding is too many people rely on other people to do things, and they just can't execute what you have in your head. So you end up wasting time redoing it, trying to explain, no, that's not really what I wanted. But if you can execute it yourself and create a platform or a template for what your thoughts and design are, or it can be with a product, it can be with what I call a widget. It's a product, it's a television show, it's whatever a widget might be to get it out to the people. But when you see how a business comes from zero, you really pay attention. And I think that's one thing that I had very good trait. Another trait was just focus. Mm-hmm. Focus. And I saw how he ran things. I was part of what is pretty exciting. And this is where I'll talk about this some more, but just to touch base, we knew we had something, but we had to find out if other people would want it. Mm-hmm. And we knew pretty much nobody wants to wait around the street, right, for, but how much would you be willing to pay extra not to do that?
Right.
So we would do like these fake marketing. We'd get like pin buttons that said, American marketing. And we'd have clipboards, and we would talk to people in the lines. And that's one of the biggest fake it till you make it.
Gosh.
And so, yeah, we would do street.
You're getting data.
Yes. And it's exactly. And
now we can send like a MailChimp survey to people, and they're going to fill out data. Like I just received one yesterday because I take my little kids to like a play gym. Right. Yeah, and they're like, I get an email from them, and they send a survey, and they're like, which times work best for your 2-year-old? And all these parents are filling out these things. Like, but now everything is digitized, right? But back then, like, it was not digitized. If you wanted data, you had to go out and get that data yourself.
No, and it's true. And we learned so much. But that's where the hard work. You can't sit at home and Google things, guys. You can't. Right now it is true. I'm actually writing a book on a separate subject, and I had started it, and now it is research based. And so I am in business with 3 different focus groups that do Monkey Survey, a couple others, just finding out. And to me, it's like, wow, that's incredible. When I did start Betty, I did use a lot of focus groups. I had to go to a company because we didn't have access.
Right. Which we are going to talk about, Betty, in a little bit. But I also want to make clear that when we're talking about like this service with the movies, we're talking about Movietime, right? So
Yes,
like anybody in
that's
my
correct. I'm sorry.
generation,
Yes.
right? So my generation, like I grew up in movie phone was happening what in the 90s?
Yes.
Yeah, I was in middle school. I'll never forget it. And I think it's fascinating to hear about things how they like having an opportunity to talk to somebody like you, Nancy, that you started before things were so easy. Like not that they're easy now, but like they're accessible now.
Yeah.
Things are a lot more
Completely.
accessible than they were when you were doing them. So I think it's like so important to go back to these fundamentals, right? The fundamentals.
100%. Like I said, there are some great things about being on the internet and getting information. It's
Totally.
another thing just showing up.
Yes.
It
So much.
really
Yes.
is. I cannot stress that. And you know what? The telephone is probably one of the biggest distractions ever. It can be a good thing. For instance, I speak at some of these youth CEO organizations where I say this can either be your friend, the phone can either be your friend or it can be your enemy. When you're working a job, you are to be paying attention. So I created a scenario where you're working at a job and it's a retail job. And if you're on your phone, you're not watching your customer. And you could be thinking, okay, let's say the owner of the retail business is wondering, well, I wonder why the little widgets up on the counter aren't selling. And you as a retail as a hired person, you have every opportunity to wonder where is it they're walking off to and buying. And it's a perfect example that if you're on your phone and you're not watching it, then you're missing out on huge opportunities of information. One, to tell your boss, hey, I got an idea. I'd like to move these other widgets over on the counter. I'd like to move these, because what happens is those people, and especially now where retailers or bosses are like, I need smart young people. I need people who are focused. And I think that's one of the biggest things is people have lost focus. And one of the deterrents or one of the problems is the phone.
Totally. And like it's so hard because a lot of business is done on your phone, So it's
It is.
easy. It's easy to get distracted, right? Like
You know
so
what? It can be an advantage and it can also be a huge advantage.
like and just from a parenting standpoint, like I work a lot from my phone, right? So I run my business from my phone. I record my podcasts on my computer and the rest of it is like digital stuff, right? And I'm my own boss of my business, right? Okay. Then I'm with my kids. I have 3 kids, a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 9-week-old. So if I'm with my children and I'm on my phone, who's the CEO of my company? Who's the boss of my family is the children. The children, they're my boss. Like if I'm not watching them, so I'm turning what you're saying into like a parenting analogy. If I'm not watching them, I'm unable to collect data about
Mm-hmm.
what they need. Right. So to your
Absolutely.
point that like the phone can be your friend or your enemy, like it's spot on. And we don't need to be distracted in either
Yeah.
one of those moments.
And I think people miss out on good opportunities for invention because we're not focused on behavioral aspects of people. Um, if you're sitting, let's go back to the retail situation. People are picking up a little widget and they're like, God, I wish this widget had a little mirror on it. Well, you're thinking to yourself, oh, that is a great idea. I wonder how you're right. And there's been a few comments about this widget and it needs, boy, they've really talked about that a lot. And there's another thing that people don't know. There's a convention for anything. So if you're thinking, okay, here's a widget. Let's say it's a concealer, okay, and people are picking it up, and they're thinking, God, I like the shape of this, but I wish it had a mirror. How do you break down doing a cosmetic, a piece of cosmetic, a concealer? It could be actually, you know what? I want to make a new pair of vegan shoes. People love these shoes, but they don't like leather. Another widget, well, I've heard comments, 10 people say, I wish these weren't leather. If it's a shoe, if it's a cosmetic product, you can literally Google conventions, cosmetics, leather, shoes. If you want to come up with, a lawn product, a new type of sprinkler, you really, really can find a place. And it's probably one of the best things to invest is a plane ticket, a cheap plane ticket somewhere. Usually it's Vegas, usually it's New York. And you just start to grab the convention resources. You go and talk to people. They will scan your tag, and you will start to collect who would now might be potentially your vendors or just information. Because these people are there to help you, to teach you. They also want your business. And a lot of times they will help you out at no cost, thinking that you might have the next big thing.
Who are these people?
These are people.
I don't understand.
When you go to there's at the Javits Center in New York City, there's the packaging, cosmetic, gift shop, packaging, and there's also the cosmetics where they make cosmetics or the raw materials. So when
you refer to Vegas, are you referring to like the magic show?
Yeah, that would be for clothing. Yes, absolutely.
So just to clarify for our listeners, what you're talking about, like when you say take a hopefully inexpensive plane ticket somewhere, you're talking about go to these conventions, go to these like where there's going to be hundreds, if not thousands of retailers and product manufacturers at
wholesalers,
all of this. Like if you're really trying to get your feet wet in this a industry, find where they are having that convention and go to it and gather information.
Yeah.
That's the soundbite there.
What I have found, I have another idea that I'm developing, and I'm resourcing raw materials, and it's it's a cosmetic product. And you know what? There is a raw material ingredients at the Javits Center. So I kind of know what I want, but I'm not sure. I kind of broke it down based on what I think I can do. And I just went there and I talked to as many people. Do you know about the high tides number 10? And I kind of know, but then you learn so much, and they will talk to you.
But Nancy, I think that you're onto something. And I think that this is something that really my demographic of listeners, I have a pretty equal split between like the 25 to 35 age range and the 35 to 45 age range, right? Like that's my big chunk of listeners. And I feel like it's so important for people in my age group, especially like moms who are starting businesses and even like younger people who are have entrepreneurial spirits to like really remember about the work that goes into the success story, because of Instagram, because of social media, everything looks like a success story.
Exactly.
Right. So like it's easy to like think it's like these college kids who come out of work and like out of school and they're like, well, I want to get paid this much. You're like, whoa, like we got to start somewhere. I think it's so important to drive these messages home. And I think for even seasoned business owners, it's a great refresher. Like even when you're talking about like your retail example about like having your salesperson in the store, like what they should be looking for, and this has a lot to do with mentorship for existing business owners that could benefit from this information. This conversation is so good, but before we keep going, I want to take a minute to thank our sponsors, Sana Skin Studio. The best way for me to describe Sana is that it feels like coming home. Unlike traditional facials, Sana's facials are rooted in education, and I love this so much. Every experience I've had at Sana has been a chance to learn more about my skin and its needs. I love that the facials are effective while also being accessible enough to be a monthly ritual rather than a yearly splurge. I'm honored to be able to provide our audience with a promo code. Use the code THENOGLOW for $25 off of your first facial at Sana when booking via sanaskinstudio.com. So let's talk about your taboo product, Betty Beauty.
So we're living in Rome and we take our two boys. I'm sitting in a hair salon and I'm just kind of watching people, and just to watch the Italians is great. And they are getting their hair done, going up to pay, and their colorist is coming from behind and giving them like a little baggie of something, a little sack. And I thought, they're like, oh, grazie. And they seem so happy about it. And I'm like, well, that's sweet. Oh, you get like a little goodie bag. And so I saw this happening. And then again, curiosity. What is in the bag? I ask, the receptionist, and she just kind of looks at me, and very proudly, she goes in Italian, she basically says, oh, is the color for the hair, parlea, for the hair down there to match. And I'm like, wait, it's extra color and she goes, oh, yes.
For pubic hair.
Yes. To make, yes. And also that's another thing too is, I'm so trained now not to say pubic because of my marketing for the product, where it is pubic hair dye. I can say it is now. It's come out in the press that it is pubic hair dye.
Yes.
But so I thought, if they're doing it here, they must be doing it everywhere, but I don't know about it in the United States. So come back to the United States, or we did our 2 years there. We come back. I then I call Barnard College, really smart girls there. I hire a couple girls and I go, guys, we're going to figure out a cryptic questionnaire, and you guys have to figure out how to get it to 300 salons throughout the United States. And they did, and we worked on it. We asked, do you do hair color? Yes. How often do you do someone's roots? Do you wax eyebrows? Do you wax the bikini? Do you also dye eyebrows? We got back these questionnaires, and the majority of them said yes. We get asked, the colorists said we get asked all the time. Gray hair.
I'm going to text my colorist right now. You know that? I'm going to be like, hey, Jen, has anybody ever asked you for color for hair down there? I'm going to text her that today.
Yeah.
She's going to be so excited when she listens to the episode, because she's going to be like, she totally texted me.
right now. And so I thought, wow, there is, and everyone always said, oh yeah, does the drapes match the drapes match the carpet with like blondes? Is she a true blonde? So I thought, and there was nothing like it. There was like a little bit of bleach cream that like Marilyn Monroe and like Playboy people used to use, because everyone still had hair up until the hair removal, craze, happened, which was also an obstacle, but I got through that. The obstacles for doing it, and our survey said that salons couldn't do it because of the liability, that it could be dangerous.
Sure.
So I'm like, I get it. Well, there's already an existing hair color. Okay.
Yeah.
One, it's runny, not for down there, but
in general.
So it's too runny. It smells. No one's ever going to put that down there. You couldn't, because it's going to seep into the sensitive areas. One, it needs to be really thick so it doesn't drip. Two, I don't want it to seem like it's like regular hair dye. Needs a fragrance. Three, has to be safe enough. How do I do that? How do I make something safe for down there? I then did some research, and I found that there was a doctor who worked with hair color companies in the 70s and 80s, that he was the main guy who would basically approve the carcinogenic aspect of removing whatever colors were cancer causing maybe. And I thought, he knows his shit. I call him up. His name is Jeffrey Cabot. And I call him up. And
does he know who you are? Is he like expecting your call, or you're like, hey, I have some questions?
There's no product. No, he has no idea. So I meet with him. I go, listen, I want to meet with you. So I had this NDA. I met with him, and I kind of pitched him my ideas. And I said, I want to create something that it would be safe for your wife to use. And so I worked with him, and I then wrote 10 hair color manufacturers. Nobody called me back. They didn't know what my idea was. I just said, hey, I have this idea. I need like a low minimum run. I don't know if this idea is going to fly, but I would really love to meet with you and experiment, with my idea. One company called me back in New Jersey, and I thought, okay, well, one company called me back. That's fine. So I went to New Jersey. I had my non-disclosure, and I then by that time had come up with a couple ideas how I wanted the box. And I started to realize, because it's such a personal area, and we only have been conditioned to think of that area as personal, there's always something wrong with it. It's either having a period, or it's too hairy, or it's, you need douche for it, or cleansing, and I go, mine's not going to be that. Mine is not for a problem. It's going to be a beauty anti-aging product. Now, this is in 2006. So there was no such thing as like anti-aging. There was no such, and so I go to New Jersey, and I meet with the company. They sign it, and I show them my idea. And I have blonde, brown, auburn, black. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to do like a fuchsia?
Yes, I was just thinking that. I was like, well, what about pink?
Oh, yeah. Literally, the pink, the Fun Betty, I named it Fun Betty, ended up paying our rent like straight away. That's the thing that got us out of any debt, was Fun Betty. Women were really using Fun Betty as an alternative to kind of have a great weekend with your husband or your partner. And then what was great is we could do an upsell where dye it hot pink and then re-dye it your natural color. So we were getting like, a twofer. So what I did was I knew that if I were to get copied, I knew that what would be the smartest thing to do. And there's only really one way. And I wasn't going to use a real woman's body. I didn't want it to seem like it was a personal care. And when you see like a realistic body and it down there, graphically, it's really hard to do. So I thought, I'm just going to use the triangle. And I thought, everyone else is going to try and use the triangle and blah. So I thought, I wonder if I could copyright the triangle. Again, curiosity. This would solve a problem for competitors. They would never be able to use a shape. And so I did a little research, and I found the guy who copyrighted the color brown for UPS. And I thought, if you can copyright a color, maybe you can copyright a shape. Met with him. I ended up, probably my most expensive stuff was copywriting down there, hair down there, color down there. And I was able to copyright the triangle.
I feel like I've known you for years, and this is like a huge success. I'm like so happy that you've copyrighted the triangle.
And it's interesting because just the other day we were at Thanksgiving, and there was some people there, and they wanted to hear the story because they had like some ideas about, and they were very young, some ideas. And I said, one of the smartest things I did was put some money into protecting your product, especially if you're the first product and there will be other people copying your product.
I love this message of protecting your product.
Yeah, protect your product.
That's the takeaway from that experience that you had, is to protect your product. So with that though, with this taboo product, like when I was reading, I'm reading about your biography, and I'm getting prepared for this interview. Like, talking to you makes me feel completely different about the product, right? But at first, when I hear about this product, I'm like, this makes me question, like, who determines the beauty standard, right? Like, why do women feel the need to color their hair down there? Like, why? And I went through, and this is part of like something that I went as I came into motherhood, Nancy, was like, I remember when I was like pursuing having a vaginal delivery, like the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, what if my vagina is ruined forever? My husband's never going to have pleasurable sex with me again because of my vagina being so whatever. And
all valid. Yep.
Right. Like, I mean, now my perspective on it after being a mother of 3 is like so drastically different. Like, I have a lot more confidence in who I am as a woman beyond like just being like an object for sex, right?
Right.
And I know like that my relationships are so much more deep than just something as silly at that. It almost seems silly at this point that I would ever have considered it, but it's like a real thing. And to think that other women don't think that, I think it would be a huge lie. Like, I think a lot of women think that. And I think a lot of women are insecure about the way that their genitalia look. I think that that's true. And at the same time, I want to know why. Like, why? Who is saying that? Why? Are we seeking the approval of men? Are we making these decisions from a place of like sincerity and wholeness within ourselves? Like that's where, like, for me personally, I'm like, I want the pink dye instead of the one that colors grays or whatever. Like if I'm going to dye my hair blonde, because I like to have fun, right? It made me think about who defines the standard of beauty.
One thing that I do know is it's our own little milestones as we get older. And we found that when you turn gray, people, the gray roots is like a huge business. And that is within ourselves. Is it controlled by an environment out there that says you have to stay young? Yes, it does. But also we kind of feed into that because we also want to be young. And I think as we get older, there are these little elderly milestones, and I think that that's probably not the right way to describe it, but once we start to get gray hair or we start to see wrinkles, we feel good about when we take care of ourselves and the confidence that comes from that. We had done a focus group with a group called Red Antler years ago, and we had people who had used the product, and we asked, what did you feel like? Nobody really sees down there. People do see your roots on your head hair, so we can understand that. But when you use the product, how did it make you feel? What can you compare it to? And they said, it made me feel good that I was doing something for myself, much like getting a pedicure. And I thought that was really interesting. A pedicure. No one really sees it, but they feel good about doing that. A lot of our feedback, and I do a lot of, let's see what our customer says. And I think that's very important because you can go down a path, which I did, that was the wrong path. And I had to like move the mountain of my company into a different direction once I found out certain things about the product and who was buying it and where. And that's also another point of focus. Know your product, know who needs it, and then shift it to where you can get it to those people. There was something that happened where people were getting, roots and gray hair. When they found a gray pubic hair, it sent them over the edge. It sent them into, oh my God, one, I didn't know that happened. Two, that has got to be one of these elderly milestones that is saying, I'm getting old. Like it came out of a surprise, and we found that women were completely jarred by that.
I think like the desire for youth has a lot to do with like our relationship with mortality.
Oh,
Like with our
absolutely.
existence, and so we can on one hand say, oh yeah, like, oh, you just want to look young and that's such a
No.
narcissistic thing. And that's so like, why can't you age gracefully and all these things that we hear out in the ether. But like really what this is like us coming to grips with the fact that like, we're not going to be here forever.
Yeah. And when I guess those were the words that I was probably reaching for where I said elderly milestones.
Yeah. We're like, oh my gosh, my hair's going great. My life has years now that I can count.
Yeah.
Like that's scary.
It's
So
very
let
true.
me find a way to bring a little bit more joy.
Yeah. And we get limited. So let's say I used to be a roller skater. Like, I grew up in Kansas. There was, Salina, Kansas was the roller rink. I was really good. We would do it on Saturday nights. It was like a hang. I literally tried to roller skate about 4 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Can't do it. So
yeah, I can't do it either.
as we age and we have kind of like these aging milestones, we'll do what we can do. Someone might not be able to roller skate anymore or do a back bend, but what they certainly can do is cover their gray hairs. So I think also we will do what we can and capable of doing, not only physically, but monetarily, and what's an easy reach or what it is we can do. We can't turn back time on various things, but what we can do, I think we gravitate toward.
We can create joy and we can create empowerment. You know what I mean? And that's ultimately what it comes down to. I know Like when I look good, when I feel good, I look good. When I look good, I feel good. It's, it's all like this big cycle. And and I've had this conversation so many times. It's like, why do we put braces on kids?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, right? Like like who cares if they have, because we like to look a certain way and to feel a certain way and to feel confident.
Right.
And that's what it comes down to, right? Is feeling
Right.
self-confident. And like, whether or not anybody's seeing your hair down there, you know it.
And it's interesting because I just did a poll for men, and the men are the most insecure about going gray down there and just looking gray on their beards. You notice that there's a lot of premature gray on people when they grow beard, men, not women. And it is a physiological situation where there is a sheath on men's on their face hair, like their beards, their chest hair, and their pubic hair. And this sheath is what holds the color. And that wears out faster than their head hair. And so that's why you might see, you can look at almost any celebrity, or, when that's who you mostly see, or you can see a man. You can see, I'm sure you have friends where you're like, their hair on their head is not as gray as their beard. And so we started to find out that men were using our product. And even though it was Betty colored for the hair down there, because men were dating again. People are dating again. So I knew that there was a need for the men, because right now Just for Men is really the only product. And it is so harsh, and you can't use it. You can barely use it on their facial hair, and it looks horrible because it just looks like shoe polish. Well, ours looks natural because it's more of a safe product, and it doesn't just like strip your hair and deposit the color. And that's why it looks, like one color. And men were starting to use it. And we started to get letters or emails saying, thank you so much. The confidence of dating again. And so this has been going on, for a while. So I decided I want to do a men's product just for them. And so recently I did one of my focus groups, and I found that the men wanted to feel more confident. And they felt so old. Talk about women feeling old. Across the boards were hard numbers, true hard numbers about men feel really old when they have so much gray in their hair, and men are graying much faster than women. And so I did it by age, I did it by location, beard, chest, their pubic hair, and even their beard hair, having it be so gray bothers them. But they also want to have the gray hair. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, they also want to have the facial hair.
Right.
And you see what their answers were, and you're almost like, oh my God, they're really insecure. And they too want to be as aging and having these elderly milestones, but unfortunately they get them much faster than women. I just really believe you'll do what you can. You can't age back enough to be able to take, do what you once used to do, but you go and you do a reach of what you can do to make you feel great.
Well, Nancy, thank you so much. We're running out of time. I feel like I could just talk to you forever. I would love to talk to you again.
I'm here.
I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to just get to know you on this show and to share your wealth of knowledge with my listener base.
I love questions. I love any kind of question. So if they have any questions for you, I'm more than happy to come.
Let's do a follow-up interview where we do a Q&A. Let's do that.
Questions. Yeah, they can ask me anything.
All right. I'm here for it. Nancy, thank you so much. Can't wait to chat again.
All right. That would be great. Thank you so much.
This podcast was brought to you by Sana Skin Studio. Be sure to use my code, TheNoGlow, for $25 off of your first facial at Sana when booking via sanaskinstudio.com. More than a skin studio, Sana is a movement towards healthier skin and self-love. Thank you so much for listening to The Know. If you loved this episode, go ahead and share it with a friend. Words are so powerful, and someone may need to hear what we covered today. And if you really loved this episode, please take a moment to rate the show and leave a review. Your comments are so important and valued, and they give other listeners insight on what to expect on The Know. You can connect with me personally via Instagram at Nikki Sap Spo and The Know with Nikki Spo. My hope for you today is that you are fearless in looking inward so that you can be your highest, most authentic self and go after the life of your dreams.